I wasn't supposed to be at my son's wedding. After I refused to hand over my house to his bride-to-be, I'd been quietly erased from the guest list, the family photos, the whole celebration. It's what's best for everyone, my son had said, not meeting my eyes. So when I walked into that church on Saturday afternoon, every head turned. My son went pale. Melissa, the bride, actually gasped. But it wasn't my presence that shocked them. It was the man on my arm. You see, 3 weeks earlier, I'd hired a private investigator to look into my future daughter-in-law's past. And what he found was explosive. The man beside me? That was James. Melissa's husband. Her first husband. The one she never actually divorced. I smiled as I took my seat in the back row, and I waited. Because in exactly 15 minutes, when the officiant asked if anyone knew of any legal reason these two shouldn't be married, I was going to give them all a reason they'd never forget. Before you judge me, let me tell you how I got here. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Drop a comment and tell me if you've ever dealt with a manipulative family member. Your voice matters. Let me back up 6 months. That's when Melissa entered our lives like a Category 5 hurricane disguised as a gentle breeze. My son Thomas brought her to Sunday dinner at my house, the house I'd spent 40 years paying for, the house I'd worked 3 jobs to afford after his father walked out on us when Thomas was just 2 years old. "Mom, this is Melissa," Thomas said, his eyes shining with that look men get when they're completely blind to reality. "She's the one." Melissa was beautiful, I'll give her that. 38 years old with perfect teeth, perfect hair, and a smile that looked like it had been practiced in front of a mirror 1,000 times. She glided through my living room like she was already measuring it for new furniture. "Barbara, your home is absolutely charming," she said, though the way she said charming made it sound like quaint or outdated. "So cozy and lived in." Lived in. That's what people say when they mean old. Over dinner, Melissa talked constantly. About her job in marketing, about her expensive tastes, about the lifestyle she was accustomed to. My son hung on every word, and I watched him transform into someone I barely recognized. The boy who used to help me clip coupons was now talking about luxury vacations and designer brands. "Thomas tells me you own this house outright," Melissa said suddenly, her fork pausing over her plate. "No mortgage, completely paid off. That's so rare these days." "I worked hard for it," I replied, feeling suddenly defensive. "Oh, I'm sure you did." She smiled that smile again. "It must be exhausting, though. Maintaining a house this size at your age. All the repairs, the yard work, the property taxes." At my age. I was 69, not deceased. That night, after they left, I stood in my kitchen and felt uneasy. I couldn't quite explain why. Melissa had been perfectly polite, perfectly charming. But something felt wrong, like when you smell smoke but can't see the fire. I should have trusted that instinct. 2 weeks later, Thomas came over alone. It was a Tuesday evening, around 7 p.m., and he looked nervous in a way that made my stomach drop. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with homework, where we'd eaten countless meals together, where I'd held him after his father left and promised him we'd be okay. "Melissa and I are getting married," he said, and my heart should have lifted. This was supposed to be good news. But the way he said it, rushed and apologetic, told me there was more coming. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I managed. "When?" 3 months from now. June 15th. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "The thing is, we need to talk about living arrangements." Here it comes, I thought. Melissa's lease is up next month, and my apartment is too small for both of us. We need a real home, something we can grow into. He paused. "We were thinking this house would be perfect." I set down my coffee cup carefully. "You want to move in here?" "Not exactly." He pulled out a folder from his bag. "We were thinking you could sign the house over to us as a wedding gift. You know, to help us get started. And don't worry, we'd make sure you're taken care of. There are some really nice retirement communities in the area." I stared at him. At my son. The boy I'd sacrificed everything for. You want me to give you my house and move into a retirement home. It's not a retirement home, Mom. It's a senior living community. They have activities, social events, other people your age. You'd probably be happier there anyway. I'm happy here. In my house. That I paid for. Thomas's expression hardened, and I saw Melissa in it. She'd been coaching him, practicing this conversation. Mom, let's be realistic. You're not getting any younger. What happens if you fall? What if you can't take care of this place? We are trying to plan ahead. I'm 69, Thomas, not 99. I walk 3 miles every morning. I just refinished my own bathroom. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of my own house. He pulled out papers from the folder. We already had our lawyer draw up the transfer documents. It's really simple. You just sign here, and we handle everything else. The property taxes, the insurance, all the maintenance. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. I looked at those papers, at my son's expectant face, and felt something crack inside me. Not break, but crack. Like ice on a frozen lake when you hear that first dangerous sound. No. Thomas blinked. What? No. I'm not signing my house over to you. Mom, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You're asking me to give up my home, my independence, my security. For what? So you and Melissa can have a free house. It's not free. We'd be taking care of you. I don't need taking care of. I need my son to respect me enough to not ask me to give up everything I've worked for. Thomas stood up, his face flushing. Melissa said you'd react like this. She said you'd be selfish about it. Selfish. That word hung in the air like poison gas. Your future wife, who I've met exactly once, is calling me selfish. She's trying to help. She's thinking about our future, about building a life together. But you're too stuck in the past to see it. He left without another word, taking his papers with him. I didn't cry. I was too angry to cry. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my living room, looking at the walls I'd painted, the floors I'd refinished, the home I'd built from nothing. That's when I noticed it. A small detail I'd missed during dinner. Melissa had been taking photos of my house. Not casual vacation photos. Deliberate, methodical photos of every room, every corner, like she was documenting property. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I hired a private investigator. Mr. Harrison came recommended from my neighbor's daughter, who worked in family law. He was in his 50s, professional, and didn't ask why a grandmother wanted to investigate her future daughter-in-law. I just need to know who she really is, I told him in his office downtown. Something feels wrong. Trust your instincts, he said. They're usually right. For the next 3 weeks, I heard nothing from Thomas. No calls, no visits, no updates about the wedding. It was like I'd been erased from his life because I wouldn't give him what he wanted. Then, on a Thursday afternoon at 2:30 p.m., Mr. Harrison called. Mrs. Chen, you need to come to my office immediately. I found something. The file he showed me was thick, detailed, and damning. Melissa wasn't who she claimed to be. Her real name was Melissa Porter Sutherland. The hyphenated name came from her first marriage to James Sutherland, a real estate developer in Connecticut. They'd married 7 years ago in a lavish ceremony that made the social pages. Past tense. I asked. They divorced. That's the interesting part. Mr. Harrison pulled out a document. I can't find any record of a divorce. No filing, no decree, nothing. According to Connecticut state records, they're still legally married. I stared at the marriage certificate. Melissa and Porter and James Robert Sutherland, married June 8, 7 years ago. But that would mean if she marries your son, she's committing bigamy, which is a federal crime. My hands were shaking. Are you absolutely certain? I contacted James Sutherland directly. He was very surprised to hear that his wife was getting remarried. Mr. Harrison slid another paper across his desk. He confirmed they never divorced. In fact, they're technically still married, though they've been separated for 3 years. Why didn't she divorce him? Financial reasons, apparently. Their prenuptial agreement states that if she initiates the divorce, she gets nothing. If he initiates it, she gets a substantial settlement. She's been waiting him out, hoping he'll file first. I thought about Melissa's designer clothes, her expensive tastes, her need for my house. She's broke. Worse than broke. She has over $200,000 in credit card debt and 3 judgments against her for unpaid bills. She's what we call a serial opportunist. She finds men with assets, manipulates them into marriage or cohabitation, and bleeds them dry. My son doesn't have assets. Except access to your house. Mr. Harrison finished my thought. She probably figured once she married him and got that house in her name, she could sell it, pay off her debts, and move on to the next target. The room spun slightly. This woman, this stranger, had looked at my son and seen nothing but a path to my property. Mr. Harrison, I need you to contact James Sutherland. I'd like to meet him. We met at a coffee shop in Riverside 2 days later. James Sutherland was 40 years old, tall, tired-looking, and angry in a quiet, controlled way that suggested he'd been angry for a very long time. "Thank you for meeting me," I said as we sat down with our coffee. "When your investigator told me Melissa was getting remarried, I thought he was joking." James stirred his coffee mechanically. "We are still married. She knows we are still married. This is fraud." "Has she tried to contact you? To finalize the divorce?" "Not once in 3 years. She just disappeared. Cleaned out our joint account, maxed out our credit cards, and vanished." He looked at me directly. "Mrs. Chen, your son is in danger. Not just financially. Melissa is unstable. When we were married, there were incidents." "What kind of incidents?" "She became violent when she didn't get what she wanted. Threw things, broke furniture, threatened suicide if I tried to leave. I stayed far longer than I should have because I was afraid of what she might do." My blood went cold. This was the woman my son was planning to marry. "Mr. Sutherland, my son's wedding is in 1 week. Saturday, June 15th at 3 p.m. at Sacred Heart Church in Riverside. I was hoping you might be available to attend as my guest." He understood immediately. A slow smile spread across his face. "Mrs. Chen, I wouldn't miss it for the world." The week before the wedding was torture. Thomas called once, on Tuesday, to formally uninvite me. "Melissa thinks it's better if you don't come, Mom. You've made your feelings clear, and we don't want any negative energy on our special day. Thomas, please listen to me. There are things about Melissa you don't know. I know everything I need to know. She loves me. She supports me. She doesn't try to control me with money and property." The line went dead before I could respond. I wanted to tell him everything. To scream the truth through the phone, to force him to listen. But I knew he wouldn't believe me. He was too far gone, too deep in Melissa's web. Sometimes the only way to save someone is to let them see the truth with their own eyes. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, 72 degrees, the kind of day people dream about for weddings. I dressed carefully in a navy blue dress and pearls, the same outfit I'd worn to Thomas's college graduation. Something that said mother of the groom, even though I'd been specifically uninvited from that role. James Sutherland picked me up at 2:30 p.m. He wore a dark suit and carried a folder of legal documents. "Ready?" he asked. "Absolutely." Sacred Heart Church was beautiful, decorated with white roses and tulle. Guests filled the pews, all of them strangers to me. Melissa's family, her friends, people who had no idea they were witnessing a fraud. We arrived at 2:55 p.m., 5 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to start. The timing was deliberate. Late enough that everyone was seated, early enough that the ceremony hadn't begun. When we walked through those church doors, the reaction was immediate, every head turned. The murmur of conversation died like someone had flipped a switch. And at the front of the church, standing with the officiant, my son went absolutely pale. Melissa appeared from the side room in her wedding dress. When she saw James, she actually stumbled. Her hand flew to her throat, and for just a moment, the mask slipped completely. I saw pure terror in her eyes. James and I walked calmly to the back pew and sat down. I smiled at Thomas. He looked like he might pass out. "We are gathered here today," the officiant began, his voice uncertain as he glanced between Melissa's frozen face and our unexpected presence, to join Thomas Michael Chen and Melissa and Porter in holy matrimony. Porter. Not Porter Sutherland. She'd dropped the hyphenated name, erasing her marriage like it never existed. The ceremony proceeded, but the energy in the church was wrong. Guests kept turning to look at us. Melissa's hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped her bouquet. Thomas looked like he was being held at gunpoint. Finally, the officiant reached the moment we'd been waiting for. "If anyone here present knows of any lawful reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." I stood up slowly. The rustle of my movement echoed in the silent church. "I object." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Melissa's face went from white to bright red. Thomas stepped forward. "Mom, sit down. You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm not finished." My voice was steady, clear, loud enough to carry. "I object to this marriage on the grounds that the bride is already married." The church erupted. "This marriage is bigamy, which makes it both illegal and void." He handed the papers to the officiant, who reviewed them with growing horror. "These are certified copies of our marriage certificate and confirmation from Connecticut state records that no divorce decree was ever filed." James looked at Melissa. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" "This is a mistake," Melissa gasped. "We separated. We've been apart for years." "Separated isn't divorced, Melissa. You're still my legal wife. Which means you can't marry anyone else." Thomas was staring at Melissa like he'd never seen her before. "You're married." "It's complicated, baby. It doesn't mean anything. We can fix this." "Fix this?" Thomas's voice was rising. "You're married? You were going to marry me while you're still married to him. You don't understand. James and we had an agreement. It's just paperwork. It's fraud." I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "It's bigamy. It's a federal crime. And you were willing to commit it just to get access to my house." Every eye in the church was on us now. Melissa's carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time. "The house." Thomas turned to me. "What does your house have to do with this?" "Everything." I pulled out my own papers, the ones Mr. Harrison had helped me prepare. "Melissa targeted you because you have access to my property. She's $300,000 in debt. She has judgments against her. She needed a house to sell to pay off her creditors." I handed Thomas the financial records. He read them, his face cycling through disbelief, betrayal, and finally, rage. "You were going to steal my mother's house." "I wasn't stealing anything." Melissa was crying now, mascara running down her face. "I love you. We were building a life together." "You already have a life. With him." Thomas pointed at James. "This is over. All of it." He ripped off his boutonniere and threw it on the floor, then walked down the aisle and out of the church without looking back. The guests sat in stunned silence. Finally, someone near the front stood up and left. Then another. Then another. Within minutes, the church was nearly empty, leaving only Melissa sobbing in her wedding dress, James standing with his arms crossed, the bewildered officiant, and me. "You ruined everything," Melissa hissed at me through her tears. "You vindictive old bitch." "No, dear," I said calmly. "You ruined everything the moment you thought you could manipulate my son and steal my home. I just made sure everyone knew about it." James stepped forward. "Melissa, my lawyer will be in touch. We are filing for divorce immediately, and we are pressing charges for the credit card fraud. I hope whatever you thought you'd get from this was worth it." He offered me his arm, And we walked out of that church together, leaving Melissa alone with the wreckage of her lies. Outside in the parking lot, Thomas was sitting on the curb, still in his tuxedo, head in his hands. I sat down beside him, not saying anything, just being there. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he finally whispered. "You tried to warn me, and I called you selfish. I was so stupid. You were in love. Or what you thought was love. How did you know? How did you figure it out?" I trusted my instincts. Something felt wrong about her from the beginning, but I needed proof before I could show you. I put my arm around him. "I wasn't trying to ruin your wedding, sweetheart. I was trying to save you from making a terrible mistake." He leaned against me like he used to when he was little. "Can I come home, Mom? Just for a while, until I figure things out. You never have to ask permission to come home." That was 3 months ago. Thomas still lives with me, though he's saving money to get his own place eventually. He started therapy to process what happened, to understand how he got manipulated so completely. Melissa disappeared after the wedding. Last I heard, James's divorce was finalized, and she's facing multiple fraud charges. She won't be scamming anyone else for a while. James and I became friends through all of this. He sends me Christmas cards now, and we have coffee every few weeks. He says I saved him years of legal battles by exposing Melissa's bigamy, but the most important thing that came from all of this was my relationship with Thomas. He sees me differently now. Not as an obstacle or a source of funding, but as his mother. The person who will always have his back, even when it means doing hard things. Last week, he brought someone new to Sunday dinner. Her name is Rachel, she's a teacher, and when she walked into my living room, she didn't measure it for new furniture. She complimented the photos on the mantel and asked about my life. "Mom's an amazing woman," Thomas told her. "She worked 3 jobs to raise me alone, paid off this house, and still had enough energy left to save me from the biggest mistake of my life." Rachel smiled at me with genuine warmth. "It sounds like you raised a good man." "I did," I agreed. "It just took him a little while to remember it." As I watched them laugh over dinner, I thought about that day in the church. About standing up and saying the words that would change everything. About the courage it takes to tell an uncomfortable truth when it would be easier to stay silent. Some people called what I did vindictive. They said I should have talked to Thomas privately, that I embarrassed him publicly, that I went too far. But here's what I know. Sometimes love means protecting people from themselves. Sometimes kindness looks like intervention, not agreement. And sometimes the best gift you can give someone is the truth, even when it destroys their fairy tale. Because real love, the kind that lasts, isn't built on lies and manipulation. It's built on respect, honesty, and the knowledge that someone cares enough about you to risk your anger to save your life. That's what mothers do. That's what I did. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.